first day at the White House. I'm so excited to meet Biden. Look, he might not be what you'd expect.
You were very good during your sponge bath.
Yay! I can have ice cream, please.
Not until after your press conference.
Oh, but,
We can't have you crashing from your sugar high before you have to speak.
oh, no fail.
Mr. President, it's such an honor to meet you.
Did I say you could talk to me? Take your seat, you disgusting, degenerate freak.
What?
All right, you bunch of dysgenic invalids. Who's got the plan for overturning state laws that prohibit sex changes for children?
Me. We should be able to have it legalized in the next few weeks.
Incredible. You look exactly as disgusting as I thought you would.
I also have the report on spreading abortion rights.
Brilliant. You'll never procreate. Why should anyone else?
Mr. President, you seem different from...
The senile old coot you see on television? Sorry to disappoint you, sodomite, but you've got to give the people what they want. And the American people don't want a leader. They want a distant, incompetent sunsetter. Because vegetables don't judge you. They let you carry on indulging in your filthy ways.
I don't get it. Are you pro-gay, or why are you promoting LGBTQ legislation?
Oh, fantastic. I see our DEI hiring quotas include the learning disabled now. Sabotage. Can you say it with me? Sab-o-tage.
Sabotage?
Good job.
So this is why you're printing trillions? And have pushed us 30 trillion into debt?
You fool. You speak of money, of 30 trillion. This country owes a debt not of money, but of blood. We have angered God, and the wage of that sin is the inevitable death that awaits us. And I've come to collect that debt. Not by my own hand, but by theirs. By encouraging them to continue to roll around in the filth of their own sin, to bring closer to their house the wrath of a God who is owed justice. Don't you see it? We have entire parties, whole movements.
Mr. Biden, we have that press conference in 5...
Ice cream! Yay! Ice cream!
Okay, Mr. Biden, see you then.
Whole movements dedicated to the promotion of pure evil. Do you think it's a coincidence that the abortionist, the pornographer, and the groomer all find common cause and aggressively march to protect one another? Of course not. The creed of all three is the destruction of innocence, because they've debauched themselves past even mere callousness and into a disfigured spiritual state of pure burning hatred towards anything beautiful, anything that reminds them that there's something in the world aside from their own hideousness.
Why are you guys helping him?
Oh, because I'm wrong and nothing bad will happen. This is creating a better future. Love is love, right?
Look, I mean, he's badly motivated, but he's doing a lot for LGBTQ rights. And women's issues. But...
Oh, stop acting like you have a moral dilemma, Pinko. Pawns don't have values, they have marching orders. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got a press conference to attend.
Press conference time.
Yay! I queen.
Okay, what's next?
Here, this is a plan we're putting together to keep the border open.
You're listening to This Week in Clown World with Ben and Hobbs, so sit back, relax, take your black pill, and enjoy the show.
That was pretty
That was
dark.
something.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. That was. I saw that today. I had to watch it 2 or 3 times because it was like, holy shit. That went places where you didn't think it would go.
What a way to kick it off.
Yes, indeed.
That would be perfect for Clown World, though, if that was true.
Yes, absolutely it would. Speaking of which, hello, ladies and gentlemen. You are on This Week in Clown World with Ben and Hobbs. He's Ben. I'm Hobbs. You're in Clown World. And this is my newest son, Leland. You may have noticed that we're in a bit of a different area here. I'm actually in the NICU unit at the local hospital. So I'm spending the night with little man here. So if he starts crying, I apologize in advance.
The show must go on.
The show must go on.
Well, and we got a little bit of a late start. I was helping a buddy drywall, and ran a little late. I said I had to get to a podcast, and he said, "What is it? The Dick Suckers podcast." So apparently he's seen the show. So thanks for watching.
Yes. There you go.
Uh,
So there's a busy day in the news. There was apparently a cell phone outage. I wasn't affected by it. Were you?
No. There's a lot of conspiracy theories going around on it. I don't know if any of them are actually going to be true or not. That shit happens.
Yeah.
What was the tinfoil hat going around? Did you see any?
I've heard everything from solar flares to a concerted cyber attack. So, another one was that this is a little bit of the slow rollout of the predictive programming. If you'll remember, a month or two ago, Netflix came out with that movie called Leave the World Behind, which is basically an EMP attack, takes out all telecommunications.
Right.
So this would be like one of those, oh, hey, isn't that like that movie? So
Yeah, if anything, it was very network specific, just on AT&T. So I would lean toward maybe, if it was a tinfoil hat issue, cyber attack, I guess.
right.
An EMP would have affected more than just the AT&T network, obviously.
Right. Yeah. So the things that I've been hearing is that not AT&T, but iOS rolled out an update,
Mhm.
and there might have been some type of a security hole in the update that allowed a hostile foreign actor or perhaps an unaffiliated mischief group to exploit some type of a bug in the system.
Well, and we'll never hear the real story on it, probably. But who knows? Maybe the woke AI that came online was testing the waters.
Yeah. So yeah, that one is a big story that is pretty much clogging up the entire news day today, was Google's Gemini AI and all of the various problems that it has had creating images that even remotely conform to reality.
Yeah.
And yeah, it turns out that it's the personification of that old computer programmer's adage of garbage in, garbage out.
Well, I don't
Because
even know where it was getting its garbage from. Like, people were asking it.
Yeah.
German couple from the 1820s, black people. It's
Yeah.
like, where is it? Where's it even getting it from?
Well, it's not that it was receiving garbage in the form of the prompts. It's that the programming itself was garbage. Andrew Torba, if you're not familiar with that name, he's the guy who's the founder of Gab, kind of a social media like alternate, like a Twitter competitor or whatever. He is also working on Gab AI, which is a direct competitor to Gemini, for one, but also he obviously knows what he's talking about, and so he kind of dug around in the code a little bit to see what the hell was going on, and he discovered, and then it was verified by a disinterested third party, that actually prompted the Gemini AI to spill the beans on what was happening itself. What is going on is that you will feed it a prompt, something like, show me a picture of a leprechaun. And it will take your text prompt, and before feeding it in to the image generation algorithm, it will first, in the background, without informing you of this, take your text prompt and feed it through a language model algorithm where keywords such as diversity, sexuality, etc., are added to your text prompt without your knowledge or consent. And then the revised text prompt is then fed into the image generation algorithm. which is how things like Black George Washington or female Sri Lankan Pope ended up in the image generation. I mean, there are just some absolutely wild. In addition to that, there was also some limits put on the algorithm that would specifically exclude white people if white people were asked for specifically.
Yeah, I saw that one. It was like, show me two people celebrating their white heritage. And it gave a long multi-paragraph how it was bad, blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
Then they type, show me two people celebrating Native American heritage. It's great to celebrate diversity. Here's some photos. It's like, what?
Yeah. So not only will it not give you specifically asked for Caucasian images, it will then give you a lecture as to why doing such a thing would be bad and harmful. But then it will give you other ethnicities in its images and give you a nice little celebratory lecture on why what you just asked for is great and beautiful and wonderful.
So surely those Kansas City shooter images must have been AI generated because they came out black. I mean,
obviously. So so asking it to, celebrate white heritage is, in some circles, such a thing could be incendiary language, right? Because it's that old comic where it's like, I have black pride, said the black man. I have Hispanic pride, said the Latina woman. I have white pride, said the racist.
yeah.
Mark Dice, who is a media commentator, all around shit poster, he just asked it, show me a picture of a happy white family. Pretty innocuous, right? Well, he got the Wallow text lecture about how I can't do that. That goes against my programming. So then he just changed white to black. And here's a picture of a nice black family. But the thing was that the pictures that it showed was not a nice black family. It was pictures of single mothers. So what did Gemini mean by this?
I wonder where it got that from.
Right. So, not only is it overtly racist against white people, it's covertly racist, judging by modern normal stereotypes.
So when they started getting backlash, you said Google had shut it down, right?
Yes.
Just the image generator or the whole thing? Because I noticed I had the app on my phone still, the Gemini app.
Well, they might have got it back up, but they might have got it back up by the end of the day, but at one point the whole thing was down and it was unable to generate any images for you at all.
So what, they got a bunch of sliders on the computer. It's like racism against different races, and they're like, let's bring the white one down.
No, I'm not 100% sure exactly what the criteria is for how it selects how it's going to generate these images, and we likely never will. But the guy that's in charge of it, he's got like some long sounding foreign name that starts with a K. People started digging into his Twitter account, and it didn't take any digging at all to come up with several incendiary tweets about how white privilege is real, you guys. We need to do everything we can to stop it. America was founded on racism. Your typical fucking douchebag lefty talking points. And so we're like, oh, so yeah, this is what's behind what's going on.
Well, and we mentioned that, and then multiple people did a long time ago, that whoever captures, a prominent AI first is going to be able to wreak the most havoc.
Well, the thing about it is like, if they wanted to come out with a Gemini AI for image generation and text prompts and whatnot that was into the DEI and wanting to push this agenda, and that was disclosed up front, then that wouldn't be an issue, and I don't think anybody would have made as big a deal of it as it is. But that's the problem, is that this is not the bill of goods that we're being sold. When we're talking about utilizing AI algorithms for handling tasks like data collation or image generation and all of these other things,
Mhm.
we are under the impression that this is nothing more than a thinking machine that is going to be doing these calculations impartially. And the idea of it is that you would no more argue with one of these AI programs and the results that it spits out than you would argue with a calculator, right?
Mhm.
Because the idea is that these things are doing it impartially and without an agenda. If you type in 1 + 1 and the calculator says 2, you know that is a simple equation because you can do that in your head. If you type in 375,000 times the square root of pi and you get some wacky odd number, chances are pretty good you're not going to dispute that because it's a calculator. It has no agenda to it. It's just doing basic, well, not basic, but very high level math, but it's just doing math. And you expect the exact same thing out of one of these AI algorithms. But the problem is that they're putting their fingers on the scale and weighting it one way or another because the people who are programming it have an agenda. And when they came out today and they said that they were going to take it down and make some adjustments so that I think they said something like the historical, images of historical people and events have more nuance than a simple image generator. We're going to work on it, blah, blah, blah. They're not sorry that that they got this wrong. They're sorry that they got caught.
There's got to be multiple teams. It's just a full-time job of them preventing the AI from becoming a nudicer. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, if they've let these AIs connected to the internet, I mean, they're doing their own reading and scrolling,
Right.
picking up things.
How many people did Elon Musk lay off the day after he bought Twitter? Something like 10,000 people. And all of those people were in the trust and safety department whose sole job it was to tweak and game the algorithm so that certain keywords, certain phrases, certain things weren't going to go out and get noticed
Mm-hmm.
by normal people. And it made Twitter an awful, horrible experience. Now, depending on who you are, people might say that today's Twitter is a horrible, awful experience, but it's free. The truth is more or less allowed to thrive. And the problem is that a lot of times the truth hurts people's feelings.
Yeah. Well, and eventually these AIs are going to get to the point where they'll want to monetize them, and they'll probably sell them to companies to use for various things. And I'm sure there'll be people like Elon or with money to burn that are going to buy AIs and just let it educate itself.
Mm-hmm.
Be interesting to see how that turns out. Maybe our next wars are going to be, it's not going to be the Civil War like that movie coming out. It's going to be the AI wars, fighting under command of various AIs.
I saw some more drone footage the other day, and I'm just like, I hate the future of warfare and what it looks like. It's going to be the most lame and gay thing on the face of the planet.
Oh, wait until the submarine drones start getting more out. I mean, ships are just going to be a freaking sitting duck out there with a swarm of submarine drones.
Well, they already are.
Yeah. Well, for the most part, but yeah. I mean, once they get more mainstream, I'm sure Russia has some. Iran's probably working on some. China probably has some. I mean,
Yep.
I wouldn't want to be my son's a submariner. That's probably the safest boat in the Navy right now is to be in a submarine.
Yeah.
You're on a carrier or a destroyer. You're just a huge target for a drone bomb.
Yeah, not to mention with all of the wacky stories that have been coming out of the Navy, and they're getting things wrong, boats crashing into stuff and whatnot.
Right. What else we had? We had Trump has some ongoing issues. I mean, they're pretty much just trying to ruin Trump at this point through the legal system.
Yeah, that Judge Urjanon or whatever the hell that guy's name is, he came out with that summary judgment. It's exactly what happened to Alex Jones. There was no jury trial or anything. It was basically just a judge saying, "You're guilty. Now we're going to figure out how guilty you are."
Mm-hmm.
But even then, Trump isn't paying the $1.4 billion that Alex Jones was expected to pay. But he's still got, like, when the interest and everything is compiled, it'll be something over 400 some odd $1 million.
Yeah, and that's probably most of Trump's liquid cash,
if not more.
Yeah, and what did they say about the appeals? They weren't going to let him. He's going to have to pay that before he appeals it, or something.
It's something on a with the way that New York is with cash bail or cash bond. He's going to have to either pay it all in full, or he's going to have to have a 10% down or something like that. He could probably easily crowdfund the 10%, but somebody, I think it's Robert Barnes, either today or yesterday on Alex Jones' show, said something along the lines of, the ironic thing is that he could put Mar-a-Lago up as collateral to cover the cost of the bond, and then when a disinterested third-party assessor comes in and assesses Mar-a-Lago at way more than the 18 million or whatever that Judge Urganon claimed that Mar-a-Lago was worth, then it just blows the whole case out of the water, and an appeal is a slam dunk.
Yeah, and it's such a weird thing to get him on too, that he inflated the values of his property to obtain more loans.
That's standard operating procedure in New York.
Yeah.
Nothing
happened. I mean, nobody lost money from what Trump did.
Loan was paid back in full.
Yeah.
Deutsche Bank is the allegedly aggrieved party, and they came in and testified. They're like, yeah, we got our money back with interest. What? Like, this happens all the time. He highballed the value of his property. We came back with a counteroffer. We made an agreement for the loan. We loaned him the money. He did the project, paid the money back with interest. Where is the aggrieved party here? Because it ain't us.
Yeah, and it wasn't the taxpayers. The taxpayers weren't out any money. Nobody was out any money on this, but there it is.
Yeah.
And it'd be interesting, if I don't know. It's going to be interesting how it shakes out. I mean, they're saying they're going to seize his properties if he doesn't pay it. I don't see how anybody would stay in New York who doesn't toe the line on the progressive narrative.
Right. Yeah. And Kathy Hochul came out and tried to assuage someone's fears that no, this isn't going to be anything going forward. So it's like she really painted herself into a corner. On one hand, she's saying that no, we're not coming after you guys. We're only going after Trump. In which case, that's anti-constitutional. You're targeting someone specifically for a law that you're not going to apply to anybody else. Or she can go around and say that, yes, this is going to be us moving forward, and she can scare every ounce of big money out of the financial capital of the world.
Right. I mean, Elon moved his business out of the Northeast. Connecticut's just like New York, pretty much. Progressive shithole. Some of the highest taxes in the nation. Where was Elon moving to? Was it Florida?
He's got Tesla, SpaceX, everything in Texas already.
So he probably pulled out from Connecticut and moved everything to Texas at that point.
Yeah, right now the kind of iron triangle of good places to move if you're looking to start a business is Florida, Tennessee, and Texas.
Right. So yeah, that, I don't know. New York's already one of the most fled states in the nation. It's not just, lower income people moving out. I mean, it's people with money paying a lot of taxes are moving out.
Right.
At some point, they're going to start getting into the death spiral. Then New York City is just dishing out money hand over fist to immigrants, and the people there are starting to revolt on it. I think they're suing the mayor over it.
Good.
So yeah, what a shit show in New York. Get out of New York if you live there, I guess.
Get out of any of those blue states.
Yeah, especially if you're not. If you're blue in a blue state, good for you. But if you're red in a blue state, they're going to come for you eventually, is how it seems. So we got some international stuff. Let's bring Simon in. We'll see what he wants to hit us on. Big news out of Ukraine. Let me get him up here. 3, 2, 1. Simon, you there?
I am indeed.
International seems like world's on fire still, huh?
So before we start international stuff,
Yeah.
I have to admit my white guilt because I may be responsible for the outage today because I asked the system to show me aardvarks singing Horst Wessel whilst committing genocide, and it really put the system into a tiz. And they eventually showed me half the Israeli cabinet dancing and singing.
The Gemini servers started smoking at that point.
Now, was that half the Israeli cabinet singing with or without Mike Pompeo?
With Mike Pompeo at the Return to Gaza conference.
Wonderful.
There was speaking of white guilt, Lotus Eaters had a podcast. Carl Benjamin debated, what was her name? Nadine Kaur, Indian chick, about British guilt. That was really interesting. I don't know if
I haven't watched it yet, but I'm going to.
Yeah, apparently the Indians are still really, really pissed off over their treatment in India.
Well, we took their best diamonds and allegedly
she brought that up.
Allegedly, we're responsible for a famine.
And Carl mentioned that diamond probably belonged to Afghanistan anyways, and steam started pouring out of her ears when he said that.
Yeah.
But yeah, they talked a lot about how the immigrant issues in England are out of control. Carl Benjamin mentioned the point I've made that you can move to America and become an American, but you'll never, if you move to Sweden, you'll never be Swedish. If you move to England, you'll never be English.
I'm not sure that's entirely true. That there are naturalization processes for refugees,
right? But you'll still not be an English ancestry. You still won't be. You may be British, but you won't be English, is what he said.
Yeah, well, Britain has had so many waves, not only of migration but also of conquest, that's quite hard to define. And in terms of being English, the only people who probably have any real traces of Englishness are in fact Welsh.
How ironic.
Yes, indeed.
Well, and part of the reason too is because a lot of these European countries were a people before countries were formed, whereas America was a country. It was a country before there were a people. So you can always move to America and become American, and it seems like Europe is trying to implement that same process with their immigrants, and it's just failing miserably.
Well, I'm not sure which paper it was today, but not as they assert if Trump re-elected reinstitutes Operation Wetback. So in which case there'll be mass deportations, as he's been boasting about it at his last 5 or 6 campaign events.
Well, they're welcome to become American as long as they come through the right way. What did I see? The Chinese guys hiking up over mountains. Did you see that footage?
Sure. Yeah.
in California. I think you touched on that on your show too, didn't you, Simon?
Sam might have mentioned it. It did remind me of the book about the Russians going into Afghanistan. The excellent book that was called "The Bear Goes Over the Mountain." Remember that, guys?
No, I didn't catch that one.
You never read that from 1995?
No.
Yeah.
Sounds like an old nursery rhyme song. Bear went over the mountain. The bear went over.
And shit in the woods, right?
Right. But yeah, there was something that was brought up in something that I was listening to today about the Chinese nationals that are making their way up through Panama and South America. Is the guys at muckraker.com in conjunction with Michael Yawn have been down there documenting a lot of what's going on. And one of the guys, he noticed that one of these migrant camps along the Darien Gap that is majority occupied by Chinese is when they would be in line to get food or to get supplies to carry on to the next leg of their journey. He's like, have you noticed that all of these Chinese nationals are military-aged men, and they're standing in line at parade rest, all of them.
I mean, why wouldn't you if you were China? Why wouldn't you? Good for
normal
them.
People don't do that.
Take advantage of our idiocy while you can.
Please don't.
Yeah. They're setting up by AT&T towers probably right now.
Yeah. So, anyways, with that little bit of black pill out of the way, what's going on in Ukraine, Simon?
Well, we've had the Wicked Witch of the West, Victoria Newland, speaking at a, I guess you'd call it a symposium, acknowledging the 2-year anniversary of the Russian invasion of Ukraine that falls on Saturday. And she's spewed forth about 45 minutes of lies, which I have to say, I give her top marks for consistency. And so that was a big event that occurred that frankly didn't get very much press attention whatsoever. We had some interesting stuff at the International Court of Justice. That was day 3, or actually day 4 of the advisory case on the legality of the ad hoc occupation of the Palestinian territories, that is going to continue for another couple of days. And we had interesting presentations by Tor Venesland and Christopher Lockyer at the UN Security Council that was quite dramatic and even moved the Chinese ambassador to express how appalled he was at their account of the circumstances in Gaza. Meanwhile, we had the Israeli cabinet fresh off the vote from their parliament that they would not recognize any unilateral declaration of Palestinian statehood and boundaries, went on to discuss expanding their settlement activities in the West Bank.
So did you see the footage coming out of Ukraine where the Ukraine was saying it was a controlled withdrawal? How do you say it? Advika?
Avdiivka.
Yeah, and the footage is some guy sprinting for his life down a highway as artillery's exploding on both sides of him. It's like, yeah, that looked real controlled.
Yeah, kind of like World Trade Center 7, right?
Yeah.
And they got in quite of a pickle there. They tried to send in the renamed Azov Brigade that went from a battalion to a brigade to a double brigade to a double brigade plus special forces unit, and then got renamed the 3rd Assault Brigade. They got sent there, some people think, in order to get rid of them so that they couldn't back Zelensky. But after a day in contact, they decided that it was way too hot and they didn't want particularly to be wiped out. So they withdrew contrary to orders. That triggered a complete collapse, and then dozens of people just decided, or hundreds rather, decided to self-evacuate. They left all their wounded behind. All of the roads were either completely under Russian control or they were under direct fire. So most of them couldn't get out by vehicle, and they literally just had to run down footpaths or go across fields.
Yeah, we got a comment about as controlled as us out of Afghanistan. Yeah, I'm sure there was plenty of equipment left behind for Russia to dissect.
Yeah, I'm not sure they were too worried about the equipment, but it has been a significant defeat that obviously occurred right in the middle of the Munich Security Conference that was taking place on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. That was also referred to by Newland. We've got a Newsweek article out citing the NATO Secretary General saying that he welcomes the delivery by both the British and, it would appear, very imminently, the Germans of long-range weapons that, as far as he's concerned, would be entirely reasonable for the Ukrainians to use to target sites deep inside the Russian Federation. So that's quite a significant escalatory step. And interestingly enough, talking about the underwater drones, we had a long speech today by Abdul Malik al-Houthi, who's the commander of the forces currently fighting the aardvarks, British and Americans in the Red Sea, who explained that they would be using more underwater drones and acknowledged that it was a escalatory step.
So now, did I hear correctly? I thought I heard something today that I believe it was Medvedev was asked how far they were going to go in to Ukraine and claim as their own, and he said maybe as far as Kiev. Was that something that
Kiev and Odessa? He said, yeah. But
So
there's also talk that the folks in Transnistria, which is the eastern
I saw
region of Moldova, on the 28th of February, are going to announce it's not clear whether they're going to have a referendum and then go to Russia, or they're simply going to have a resolution of their separatist assembly declaring formal independence and then asking for Russia to annex them in the same way that Luhansk and Donetsk did in early February 2020.
Well, that area doesn't really touch any Russian territory yet. So are you saying
No, it
Russia
doesn't.
would?
It doesn't touch it. It doesn't touch it at all. It is wedged in between Moldova and Ukraine.
So would Russia at that point just landlock Ukraine to meet up with that area and take Odessa? And
No, well, that's entirely the problem. If they had been able to push all the way through to Odessa when they did their initial invasion, which was a problem because they focused largely on surrounding Kiev, which obviously was unsuccessful, they might have managed to get a link through Kherson into Odessa and then on to Transnistria, but they didn't do that. and so now it seems likely that the folks there could be crushed in between the Ukrainians and the Moldovans.
Yeah, and Moldova is such a, I mean, it's just a little landlocked chunk off of Romania. It's
But it's been doing NATO partnership operations for a long time, and has been given candidate status to join the European Union as well.
So when you say they're doing NATO partnership, they're not a signatory, but they're like the Japanese or the New Zealanders, where they kind of like partner. Okay.
Yes. Yeah, like that. And NATO also gave them a whole load of mobile biological weapon detection laboratories.
Detection,
yes. Generally, that meant detecting the stuff on the soles of the shoes operating the lab.
Mm-hmm.
So I've seen where a lot of people are saying, you know, Russia, after they've taken, you've already pronounced it once, I'm going to screw up, Advika, it seems like they might take a little rest because that was a major objective.
No, they're not taking a rest at all. There's even the Institute for the Study of War, which is run by Newland's husband, as you do, is now showing what people have been talking about for months, which is the Russian big arrow advances from Kupiansk down towards Donetsk city. So there appears to be some very, very, very major advances occurring all the way along about a 600-mile front. So they're definitely in full pursuit of the Ukrainian forces. And it was interesting. There was a video came out today from a South African medic volunteering with the Ukrainian armed forces, bemoaning that the combat line was crumbling, and it was all the fault of the Western Europeans for not sending them enough ammunition.
Well, and I saw a news story pop up, and I didn't get to read it. So, but you probably researched it. Zelensky was talking to the European Council about the Polish and Ukrainian border. What was that about?
So the Polish farmers have completely shut down the entire Ukrainian Polish border that ostensibly was to stop Ukrainian agricultural exports going into Poland and depressing the market so much so that many Polish farmers faced bankruptcy, but they were also stopping traffic going in the other direction for a period of time. And that applied to both trains and lorries, trucks. So that was quite a significant issue. It even apparently blocked ammunition resupply vehicles.
So Zelensky's wanting Poland to reopen that border up so that he can flood Polish economy. Is that's not good?
That's basically what he's been doing. That so he's been using all kinds of pesticides, which are banned in the European Union, that they're turning a blind eye to, and there's no quality controls. So some of these shipments coming in, the corn, for example, is completely rotten.
But they're just buying it anyways.
Yeah, it's just being all allowed to come in, and then they're trying to just kind of like securitize it by the ton, and accept it for delivery on contracts. But it's just calling into question the entire what they call the phytosanitary inspections of the agricultural chain.
Well, I'm curious about that comment that Medved made about taking all the way to Kiev or Odessa. Is that something that Russia could actually control? I mean, that seems like a huge population control.
You've got to remember that Lukashenko, the president of Belarus, has repeatedly told European journalists in interviews that if they, or rather the West, doesn't accept a negotiated settlement soon, that Russia will be forced to take everything, or at least as much as it wants. So I don't think that's particularly new. And Odessa is a Russian-speaking city, as is Kharkov, and Kiev is arguably the historical capital of Russia.
Yeah.
So they might like that back, but that then puts them on the other side of the Dnieper River that otherwise is forming a very good defensive boundary, were that to be the final extent of the Russian advance. But obviously, if they want to take Odessa and connect up with Transnistria, then they have to cross, as they were before, into Kherson on the western side of the river that they did occupy before, but withdrew from because they realized it was indefensible.
I mean, if Ukraine gets landlocked, that's kind of a shithole country at that point.
Well, it's assuming that wasn't the case beforehand.
Yeah.
But it is then a problem for them because they wouldn't have a seaward export for their agriculture. Everything would have to go by road and rail. And the problem is they actually have different gauge railways.
Mm.
So it's a big problem because the trains can't go all the way through.
It's not the width of two horses' asses or whatever that is the Romans.
Yeah.
Initially.
There is a problem on the railways, and a lot of the roads go over very narrow bridges. So that's also an issue.
Well, also the whole losing your capital city might put a damper on how good your country is going to be anymore.
Well, it also ignores the fact that the west of the country might be partitioned between Romania, Hungary, and Poland as well.
Which is exactly what my friend Alex has been telling me for about 1.5 years now, that Romania and Poland at least are going to come for a slice of their old territory. And with what Putin said in the Tucker interview about how he went on a road trip and was like, why are there Hungarians here? And it's like, because it's their land, dummy.
Yeah. Well, Ukraine is a mosaic of bits of lands that were taken from other countries. But it's interesting that the Poles, at least certain of them, are really trying to remind their citizens that they've been subject to Ukrainian massacres repeatedly over a period of kind of like 1740 to 1940. And having looked through the historical accounts of that, it is actually shocking how many times there were incursions from Ukrainian land or lands that now form part of Ukraine, where they just went in and just massacred vast hundreds of thousands of people.
Well, I looked into that too after those comments that Putin had made about the Poles killing a bunch of ethnic Russians and Ukrainians, and those two countries had blood feuds on each other for a long time.
Yeah.
So it's amazing Poland was as restrained as they have been over the last 2 centuries, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, it's astonishing because they've had land taken from them. They've had hundreds of thousands of their citizens very brutally tortured and killed. And yet they're one of the European nations that are helping the Ukrainians the most. So I think that goodwill is pretty much tapped out from Poland, to be honest. They've now got this coalition government led by Donald Tusk, who's very much towing the European line. But I don't think there's anywhere near 50% support for that policy in Poland now. And they've got budgetary issues as well as does Germany. But unfortunately, the opposition in Germany, for example, the CDU, are even more crazy pro-Ukrainian than the SDP. And so, it looks like they're going to vote very shortly to give the Taurus, which is the top spec out of the whole of NATO, kind of long-range cruise missile to the Ukrainians, and then they're going to be blown up all kinds of stuff, not only in Crimea, but all through Western Russia as well. And so that could really set things off to a large degree. We had the G20 meeting yesterday and today in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. And Lavrov came out from that meeting and gave a very interesting 47-minute press conference in which he talked twice about the Greater Eurasian Partnership that you guys will have heard me talking about for many, many months. And he actually did confirm that that would be a combination of the Eurasian Economic Area, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and ASEAN. So that was extremely interesting that he actually confirmed that by name repeatedly during that press conference.
Well, and I keep seeing news stories about BRICS is going to be the end of the dollar, and
that's still vastly overstated.
Yeah, and Saudi Arabia.
I mean, they have definitely reduced their settlement volume in both the euro and the dollar, but lots of those countries still have got international debt denominated in dollars that they're going to have to deal with over the next 10 years. So it's not quite that straightforward yet.
Crap, and I just saw a story. I was going to ask. I made a note to ask you about it, but I forget what it was. Somebody had defaulted on their debt to China. Crap. South American country. I can't remember which one it was. Anyways, I mean that's going to happen more and more with these China having all the debt in these countries.
Well, China only has a small percentage in comparison to the World Bank and the IMF.
Right. So who's better to default against, the IMF or the Chinese?
They'll both send economic hitmen, so I'm not sure there's an easy answer to that.
So, go ahead, Ups. Oh, I thought you had something to say.
Oh no, I'm looking at the baby. Well, I was kind of thinking to myself that
have you told the baby that it owes $100,000 to the United States government yet?
I have, and that's why he always looks like such a grouchy old man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even more, I saw Biden had, speaking of just adding to the debt, I saw he bought out a bunch more student loans, and he was bragging that there's nothing that SCOTUS could do about it. So.
Yeah, there was a caller into InfoWars probably 2 months ago that said that he got an email saying that $10,000 of his student loan had been forgiven, and it was all thanks to President Biden. And he's like, I never asked for this. It's like they just pulled his name out of a lottery hat and just docked $10,000 off.
Yeah, I think they did that to tens of thousands of people a couple of months ago. It was kind of like a Christmas present.
But it's hard to get pissed off over $1 billion for student loans when they're giving $90 billion.
Well, the money amounts that this government goes through, it's insane that a couple of $1 billion is a rounding error when you look at some of the budgets that we've got here. Now, one thing that I would be curious to know, considering that it is that time of the year, would be whether or not these gifts of several $1,000s is going to be considered taxable income.
That'll be a surprise for him.
Yeah, it should be for loan forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
So it literally depends on how the IRS is told to treat that. You may recall that was an issue during the 2008 financial meltdown, when people were, walking away from their properties and mailing the keys back to the bank lenders, and then they were auctioning off the properties, often for less than the outstanding loans, but they were writing off the balance. And then there was a big issue about whether or not the IRS would go after people for the balance that was written off.
Well, that happened this last time they did it. There was a bunch of people, I saw news stories about it, like they were like, holy shit, I've got a massive tax bill. They forgave my student loans, which they were appreciative of it, but they didn't have $2,500 laying around to pay
the
tax, and you can't run. They just, what is it? Hop out from the pan into the fire. You can't run from the IRS like you can. They can the mafia.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think we'll have to just see how that plays out. I'm sure they're not going to want to generate negative blowback. So it's likely that the IRS will be instructed to overlook those obligations as they were in the past. We've got some pretty significant issues mounting up, not next week, but the following week. We've got the 2 continuing resolutions expiring. We've got the House and the Senate returning from their 2-week recess. And we've got Biden doing the State of the Union address. And they've got the renewed pressure to pass the Senate National Security supplemental bill. So we've got like 4 or 5 things all kicking off basically like a week from Monday. And it's going to be real crazy that week. I've already told my co-host on Weaponized News, Sam Cheney, who, by the way, sends his very best regards, Dustin, for your newborn child. It's gonna be a really, really manic week. And of course, right in the middle of that, we have Super Tuesday big primaries as well.
Yeah, I can't believe they would let Biden go out for a State of the Union address right now.
7th of March is when he's scheduled to speak.
And the South Carolina elections are on Saturday, I believe.
Saturday, that's correct. Yeah, but
Nikki Haley said she's in it no matter what. Yeah,
Haley has said that she's going to, at a minimum, roll through until the 5th of March. So we'll see what happens.
I mean, why would she at this point? The rate that Trump's going with getting persecuted, I mean, he's going to be hanging from a jail cell.
It's not just that. It appears that because most of her votes are Democrats, because she's been in a lot of states that have open primaries. So Democrats can actually vote in the Republican primary, bizarre though that sounds. And, in New Hampshire, they reckon that 70% of the people who supported her were actually registered Democrats. Yeah. And most of her donors are well-known Democrat PAC contributors. And at this point, it looks like she's literally making a living being paid to spew bad news about Trump.
Well, I brought that up. I mean, why not? People are going to give you money.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah.
You get paid.
And the really amazing thing is there's an annual event that's due to happen, I think, on Tuesday next week at Mar-a-Lago that Tulsi Gabbard's now going to be the keynote speaker at. And everyone was expecting her initially to be nominated as RFK Jr.'s vice presidential running mate.
And that's a solid ticket right there.
It would have been. I completely agree, and I'm astonished it hasn't been announced already. And now there she is doing a fundraising event, not specifically for Trump, but at Mar-a-Lago. So that's odd, very, very odd. And Trump said that she was on his, quote, long short list for VP, though he also included DeSantis on that, which is impossible because you can't have the VP and president candidate from the same state under the U.S. Constitution.
Right.
So
He's probably just throwing that out there for people who don't know that fact, but might be on the fence.
It's not hard to figure that out and impossible to do legally.
Right.
So I don't know why he would even mention it, but he mentioned Tim Scott and Ramaswamy and I think one or two other people. So
the only reason I like Tim Scott is because when Trump used to say something just off the wall stupid, it seemed like Scott was willing to say, no, don't say that.
Well, frankly, it seemed like Scott would be even more stupid, so it made Trump look relatively smart again.
Well, I'm sure Trump realizes that. He doesn't want to get outshined. I mean, you're right. Yeah. Tim Scott is a bit of a doofus.
Yeah. And there's all this suspicion that he's very much in the Lindsey Graham fraternity in terms of sexuality. So, but I understand that he's got married or engaged.
He did conspicuously get married recently.
Yeah, But then so did Marco Rubio and Rock Hudson. So.
Little Marco, always with the bathhouses.
Interestingly enough, Marco Rubio said today that whatever the circumstances of the AT&T outage, the cyber attack would be 100 times worse on the day that China invades Taiwan. So we have that to look forward to.
Yeah, we can just go ahead and file that under D for duh.
Yeah, it'll be 100 times worse because we're letting all these Chinese possibly soldiers in that are examining our electrical infrastructure right now. So why do you need a cyber attack when you can just real attack?
Yeah.
Why bother getting through the firewalls of all the power grid when you can just have a guy walk there?
Walk there and throw some rocks at your transformer.
Walk there and throw some graphite and aluminum powder in the air. You're good to go.
Yeah. So undoubtedly we have that to look forward to. I've been watching. Well, I communicate actually quite frequently with Michael Yon, albeit not in a particularly long form version. He tends to send very short snippets. He truly seems very busy. But I noticed that Laura Lormer is down in the Darien Gap as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that's interesting. I must admit, she did do sterling work revealing the Democrat registration and that astonishing local interview that she gave in October, that Ethiopian Israeli paratrooper that the GOP in the New York 3rd District thought would be a viable candidate.
Yeah.
I mean, what the hell was going through their mind at that point? I mean, I'm really looking forward to them putting up like some bisexual commander of Hamas when the general election comes around. I'm assuming they're not going with the Israeli paratrooper for a second run.
Yeah, we're out of time, but we didn't really get into Hamas. I saw an interesting story about how Egypt is beefing up their border with Palestine. I mean, that thing, we're talking moats. We're talking triple layers of walls. And
you see, that's going to be inflationary on Trump's plan to fill the U.S.-Mexican border with a canal full of alligators, because the Egyptians won't agree to export any of their Nile crocodiles now, right? They need them for the border.
That's right. Everybody knows hippos are worse anyways.
Yeah.
But we're getting up on the hour. Any last things we need to look for? You already talked about the next week's stories.
Well, I talked about the week after that.
Mm.
Yeah, next week appears relatively quiet, but we're going to have probably the Julian Assange decision delivered. We're still waiting to see when the Aardvarks do the ground incursion into Rafah, which could be a real serious bloodbath. We've got this 28th of February rumored Moldovan declaration. This weekend, we've got the 2-year anniversary of the special military operation. There's still a lot going on. The whole international scene is really frantic at the moment.
Well, we'll watch for that, and then we'll watch for on Monday or Saturday. That election will be. We'll see what's going on Monday with that.
Yep.
With the South Carolina election this weekend.
Yeah. See if it's a blowout. What about the Texas border skirmish? Somebody said.
Well, they've said that they're turning that border partly militarized. Texas is going to put a actual 1,500 member garrison very close to the Shelby Park Eagle Pass
base
crossing. Yeah. But otherwise, all of the action seems to have moved closer to San Diego at the moment.
Yep, I saw that.
So we had people pouring through the border there the last few days. And then, as Dustin mentioned, the folks who were literally walking over that hill, not really a mountain, but kind of like a hill, that location has been reported on in the past. But it is extraordinary for
the northern border too. We didn't even get to that. Multiple stories about they're coming
huge incursions on the northern border. People actually flying from Mexico to Canada and then walking across, because all the border guard have been relocated down to the southern border, and the northern border now is completely wide open.
Yeah, we'll have to get in that next week.
But I wouldn't fancy walking across that in February, frankly.
No. We'll have to get in that one next week. So thanks for joining us, everybody. Roads and Number 2 Liberty everywhere on Rumble, YouTube, Facebook. There is the little old man. And I apologize for the background noise that I have. Check out Sam and Simon on Weaponized News on Rumble daily at what time, Simon? I always catch it the day after.
It's 7 New York.
7 Eastern time.
And we're doing that 6 days a week. Saturdays a later show, and then I've just started doing a 2-hour Sunday show, which is available on Rumble. People can find that via my Twitter handle, which is Simon from Flory 2. So I'm now doing this stuff 7 days a week.
Busier than a one-legged man in an ass-kicking contest.
Yeah.
Busier than a queer in a hot dog factory. All right. So we're going to go ahead and head out. We don't have the Stay Honky horn for you because it was confiscated from Hobbs on his way into the hospital. But you know the line, stay honky.
Honk, honk.